Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk to you guys about the books that are on the top of my TBR for fall. These are books that I'm really hoping I get to. Is this realistic considering I have read 5 books this year? For me to read 8 books in one season? Probably not. But if somehow I get like a little spurt of energy, motivation, time, these are the books that I will be reading. Fall is my favorite season ever. Today is the first day that it actually feels like fall. The leaves are changing colors. It's a little bit cold. Literally the only thing on my mind has been fall. I'm wearing my sweater, little sweater pants, and I just cannot wait. I love fall so much. So all of these books are kind of fall vibes, things that I would enjoy reading for fall, some things that I have specifically pushed off until fall. So let's begin. Number 1, first and foremost, The Assassin's Blade. This one I actually want to read sooner rather than later, so if I start this and get into the whole series, the rest of this TBR may honestly even be just discarded, because if I get into that world, it might take up the rest of my year. So The Assassin's Blade, this is part of the Throne Glass series. I have been wanting to read this series for so long. I cannot believe I haven't started it yet, but I have been in a giant slump for the last year, so I haven't been reading much and haven't necessarily wanted to dive into such a big series. But in the fall, I will definitely be picking this up and hopefully entering the whole series and loving it. I'm sure I will, because ACOTAR is one of my favorite series. I love the way that Sarah J. Maas writes, and I hear a lot of people say that they love this series even more than ACOTAR, so we will see how I feel about that. Moving on, Jade City. I've talked about this before. I truly don't know what it's about. The only thing that I have been told about this that has made me want to read it is that it is a fantasy version of Peaky Blinders. That alone was enough for me to want to read it and truly believe that I will love this book. I love Peaky Blinders. I love fantasy books. Merging the two together, how could it go wrong? The one thing that kind of intimidates me about this book is that it's pretty thick, and I haven't read anything by this author. I don't know how she writes. I don't know if I'm gonna like it, but it is pretty hefty. 495 pages, which is kind of a lot for the first book of a series. This is a trilogy, I believe. I only own the first book because I'm trying to be better about my spending, okay? Specifically spending on books, because as you can see, my whole bookshelf behind me, everything just kind of fits really perfectly. And having everything on display like this, like, I really want to have read a majority of these books before I continue buying more books, because I've had people, like family, come over and look at my bookshelf and say, wow, I can't believe you've read all these books. And I'm like, I actually haven't. And they're like, oh, like, why do you buy them then? I'm like, yep, that's the question that is the problem. So I feel like it would put me at a bit of peace to know that I have read a majority of the books on my shelf and then continue to buy books, because since I have organized this bookshelf, I've actually only bought one singular book. So this entire TBR, most of it is old news, old books, probably stuff you've already read. But yeah, I have high hopes that I will enjoy this. Next, The Secret History. I would be lying if I said that I am necessarily excited to read this book. It is on my TBR because one of my friends would probably kill me if I didn't have it on my TBR, because it is her favorite book of all time. So that's the main reason that it's here. I have tried to read it. I got to page 36. Tell me why the font is so tiny, the pages are so thin, and I don't even know what it's about. I've also tried listening to the audiobook actually. I don't remember how far I got into that, but I got bored again. So I'm gonna give it like one more chance. Hopefully this year, let's say this year, this fall. If it still doesn't entice me, then I will be removing it from my life. Kind of on the dark academia vibe, we have If We Were Villains. Dark academia, I think, can only be read in the fall, so I will either read this in the fall or I won't read it until next fall or the fall after, because I refuse to read this at any other time of the year. I've actually heard that this is kind of the same exact thing as The Secret History, but people either love this one or they love The Secret History. Don't hold me to that. I don't know if that's true. For some reason, I feel like I'm going to like this one more. There is absolutely no reasoning behind me thinking that. Like, it's just a feeling. I like the cover of this one. It's very pretty. The cover of The Secret History is very pretty too, though. Don't get me wrong. But for some reason, I just feel like this one would be easier to read. I don't know. I don't know. Dark academia in general just kind of intimidates me because I don't even know what that really even means. So hopefully we'll probably give this a shot. this fall. Next we have Powerless. Can you believe I haven't read this yet? This is a fantasy romance. I really truly do think I'm gonna love this book. I have been very excited to read it. Again, I was kind of saving this for the fall just because fantasy just like thrives in the fall, you know? What I've heard is this is kind of a Red Queen meets Hunger Games meets Dance of Thieves, like all of those kind of combined, which I did like Red Queen. I love Dance of Thieves, and I actually haven't read Hunger Games, but I've seen the movie, and the storyline I do love, so I really think I'll enjoy this. Fantasy romance is my favorite genre, so that part I'm sure I'm going to love, and I've just heard such amazing things about this book and the whole series that I cannot wait to read it and see what everybody's talking about. I feel so out of the loop recently. Like, I need to know what is the talk about. Next we have Masters of Death by Olivia Blake. I have not one single clue what this book is about. I actually really have not even heard too much about it. All I know is that Olivia Blake has written one of my favorite books, One for My Enemy. One for My Enemy I read last year in August, and I think about probably once a week, to be honest. And when I'm thinking about books I want to read, I actually catch myself thinking about that book a lot, and like I just want something that kind of replicates that. Do I think this is going to be the exact same thing? Definitely not, but since it's Olivia Blake and it's another fantasy, I'm thinking hopefully I'll get the same feeling and enjoy it just as much as I enjoyed One for My Enemy. But again, I have no idea what this is about. Vampire. Okay, so the main character looks like is a vampire and real estate agent, so like a modern day fantasy. What are those called again? Urban fantasy. Oh, and the house she needs to sell is haunted. Ghost hunting the house has been murdered, and until he can solve the mystery of how he died, he refuses to move on. Interesting. Okay, actually this sounds really good, so there is justification in me wanting to read this. Besides the fact of who wrote it. I also just really love this cover. This is, I think, the Target version of the book. It was a Target edition, I think. I just think the purple and the mint green look so cute together. I love it. Okay, now I'm like really excited to read this, actually. Maybe this will be next. Next, we have the only book that is not a fantasy on this list. That is Magnolia Parks. I haven't had any kind of desire to read this series until very recently. There was seriously nothing that brought it upon me to want to read the series now. I just woke up one day, saw it on my bookshelf, and said, I think I want to read it now. So this is Magnolia Parks, Daisy Hates Universe series thing. Basically what I've gotten from this is that it's a Gossip Girl-ish reality TV type of drama with toxic relationships, and I don't know, like basically how you watch reality TV and you know it's like so bad that it's so good is what I've heard people say about this book. Does that make sense? I don't know if that's really gonna be my type of thing. I am not into the toxic part of that at all, and I don't know if I'm gonna like this at all, but I would really like to see how I feel about it. Not how I feel about the toxic relationship, because I know I'm not gonna like that, but just the series in general. Like, if it's interesting, I can push past that. I definitely prefer the more wholesome, loving, cute relationships in books, not the toxic ones, because they make me mad. So maybe I'll hate this book, but there's only one way to find out, so I'm gonna read it and find out. And the last book on my fall TBR is The Darkness Within Us. This is the second book, but kind of like companion novel to The Shadows Between Us. And The Shadows Between Us I loved so much. That is also one that I think about constantly and want another book just like that. This one is about Alessandra's sister, which Alessandra is the main character in The Shadows Between Us. I don't think you have to have read Shadows Between Us to read this one. But what I loved about that book that makes me excited to read this one is that it's supposed to be like a morally gray main character. Like the female main characters in both books are not like perfect little sweet girls. They both have some like, I was literally about to say they both have some darkness within them. Oh my god. Well, that's exactly what it is. That is so funny. I did not mean to do that at all. I'm extremely excited to read this. I actually do think that this might be my next read, because ever since I got it in my Fairy Loot box, I've just been dying to read it. Like, I need to pick it up right now. So I do think this might be my next read, and I hope that I will love it just as much as I love The Shadows Between Us, because I've been missing that feeling since I read that book, and I would just love to have it back. When I read The Shadows Between Us, that was the first time that I finished a book. Like, the moment that I finished it, I was tempted to go back to page 1 and start over. I loved it so much. And it's not for everybody. Like, not everybody's gonna love it like that. But for me, I loved it. So that is my fall TBR. I hope that I can read all of these. And honestly, I hope that I read even more, because there are books that I would love to get to. But I was trying to be modest, considering how few books I have read this year so far. So we're sticking to 8 for now. Let me know if you've read any of these, how you felt about them. I can't wait to read these. Maybe I'll include some of them in reading vlogs, but I hope you enjoyed this video and I will see you in my next one. Bye.